to the family. Yeah. I had to let my old people go. Pray they don't get mad at me. Yeah.
All right, what's good, fam?
Man, super excited. I love today. Meaning just having these episodes with you. So I appreciate you coming. Super excited. Let's get into it.
All right. We are wrapping up this conversation about kind of these different stages of life that we go through. There's roles that we're called to play in these different phases of life. We also understand that God has a path and Satan has a path that he wants us to, that each of them want us to go down. We've talked about childhood. We've talked about adulthood, the difference between independent adulthood, interdependent adulthood. Last episode, we dove into the role of a spouse and the different paths that are available as you enter into that space. Today, we're going to dive into a couple more. So we've got the space of choosing to become a parent, if you so choose. Well, some people don't choose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It just happens.
Yeah. Me for 3 times.
Hey, do your thing. I'm not there yet. Lord willing, I definitely would love to become a parent someday, but not before I'm a husband.
Yeah, come on. That's the proper process.
Yeah. So, but I'm just thankful that I have the opportunity to do that. And, but yeah, so when we think about, there's a couple of scriptures I wanted to start out with before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about. So the first one is in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 22:6. And it says, train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. What do you think about that?
I love it. I'm a parent, but I think back when I was a child, I didn't really grow up in the church at all. My dad wasn't present. My mom was out doing her thing. But my grandmothers, my grandma on my mom's side and my grandma on my dad's side, we were, they're in heaven now, but were amazing examples of what a godly woman looks like. And it wasn't anything, they weren't even preaching to me. They were just being women of God. I would peek into my grandma's room as we're settling down for bed, and I would just see through the hallway, she's in there reading her Bible. And my dad's mom, amazing, just prayer warrior. Her relationship with God was like nothing I've ever seen before. It just didn't make sense, like when you're living in the world as a teenager or whatever, you're just kind of like going through this world, but she was walking in a completely different world. It seemed like things were just happening for her, and it was amazing to see. And but they never really came at me with like, they didn't force anything. It was just a beautiful representation of what God is. I'm available. I'm going to show you what it looks like to live a godly life, but I'm not going to force it on you either. So it's just really cool. So I love that scripture because a lot of times raising a child in a way that they should go has nothing to do with like what you're saying. It's who are you and what do you represent? What are your actions teaching them?
Yeah.
And so they taught me not by just what they were saying, but by who they were. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, that's deep. I think for me, I didn't grow up with any strong examples of, I think, like role models in the faith. My family kind of believed in God. We all knew God was real, but nobody was following Christ. Like, we didn't go to church growing up. I actually hated church as a kid. Like I think a lot of kids do, just because unless you find like a really awesome church that has like a, powerful kids ministry or, youth ministry that's really sewing in. But majority of the churches I went to, like, we were in the service, not understanding what is being said, what's going on. I think one of the biggest reasons is because it wasn't something that was also being taught and modeled outside of the church, with the adults that I was around. And I remember one of my best friends, Randy, Randy.
Yeah.
His family went to church every Sunday. And then anytime I was staying at his house on Saturday, I had to go to church if I did. So there was some Saturdays I'm like, nah, bro, I'm going home, man. Like,
I don't want to go to.
Yeah,
you wouldn't stay the night because he didn't want to go to church the next morning.
Yeah. So it's like, nah, like, and he would ask me, man, you trying to stay over? You trying to stay over? And I'm like, y'all going to church? You know it? I'm like, all right, man, I'll catch you
next time.
Yeah, I'll catch you next time. But I think when I think about the power in this scripture, like actually being intentional about training up your children in the way, they should go. Kind of like you said, like there's so much that goes into training. When you think about, even thinking about training for sports, there's a lot in that.
Yeah.
There's situations you got to train for. There's endurance, there's skill set, there's and when you think about what it means to like bring a child up in the training and admonition of the Lord, like there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that it's not just what you say to them. I think what you say has to match up with how you're living, know? But I'm not a parent. You being a parent, what would you say like it means to you being a parent? Like what does that mean to you?
Make me emotional.
Come on.
Man, so what's crazy is, so I have 3 daughters. My first daughter, Ella, she's the oldest, and she made me a parent, right? And it's really, at that time when I became a father, it was very interesting because at that time I was going to church and I was trying to grow my relationship with God, and it wasn't until I had Ella that I fully understood, or she gave me more perspective of what love was. Because here was this little being that I've known for 1 second as she comes out of her mom, and I would die for this girl. There's nothing that this child can do for me. She's fully dependent on me. She knows nothing. I have to provide everything for her. Like, there's nothing that this child can do. And yet, I'm willing to die for her. So having a child, basically, I always describe this to people who are expecting. I said, it's almost as if you're watching TV in black and white before you have kids. And then when you have kids, it goes to color. And you thought you knew what you were watching, but until you actually went to color television, like it enhanced the entire experience of life. Like things start making more sense. The things that you used to care about no longer matter because that's just noise. Like your priorities shift. Everything changes when you thought you already knew. And so that is a crazy experience. But what was even cooler was that I had the realization that the love that I felt for this child is just a fraction of the way that God loves me. And I was able to invert that love because then I was able to realize that I'm a child of God and he's my Abba, he's my father. And when I felt that, I'm like, wow, because growing up in a broken household where your dad's not present or your mom's really detached from you, you really don't know what love feels like. And so when I became a father, I'm like, wow, this is what love is. I've never experienced it on this level before. And then God was like, yes, and that's just a fraction of the way that I feel about you. And that wrecked me even more. So it's a very powerful experience, especially for me in the way that my childhood, the environment my childhood placed me in. It was super powerful for me, man. So to be a father is really powerful. It gives you vision, perspective, responsibility. It challenges you all in the best ways possible. And it's not easy, but it's worth it, you know, and there's a sense of sacrifice, which is interesting too, because we see God sacrifice his son for us. There's a lot of sacrifice that needs to happen in all these steps that we've talked about. And God's preparing you each time. Like the first step is just a relationship with God, and you have to kill yourself in order to be with him. And then that prepares you to have a spouse and to serve them. Both of those things then prepare you for child or having a child. And so the way that the process of following God sets you up if you stay in alignment with his process. And I can also speak to that as well, because Ella, my first daughter, it was out of process. I wasn't married to her mom. And it caused so much damage when it was supposed to be it was a beautiful thing, but it was out of process. So there were some gaps within our relationship that weren't being fulfilled. And ultimately we couldn't build on that foundation. We couldn't build that. And it ended up our relationship came crashing down because it wasn't built in the right order. And it stinks, man. It really stinks. Doesn't change my love for my daughter or the way that I feel about being a father. It's just, it is what it is at this point. And I obviously still care for her mother, and I love her, and I pray for her, and I want her to have an amazing life. And but it's difficult being a co-parent.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing that just being vulnerable, transparent about that. And it's deep because it kind of is a perfect segue into really diving down the paths that are available for parents, either God's path or the path of the enemy. You know, as I said, I'm not a parent, but I've really been seeking God to open my eyes to how he parents me, and to help me to mature in that area. You know, I do believe that we can build the skills, the knowledge, the wisdom, the discipline required for whatever phase of life you're getting into prior to actually stepping into it, to be in a better position to, you know, experience success in that phase. I know I've heard from a lot of parents, you're never ready. And I agree, like, who's 100% ready? But I do think there are some things you can do and some steps you can take to be intentional about preparing yourself to the best of your ability, you know?
I agree. I don't know why, but this vision of war popped into my mind. I'm prior military, and what you're talking about is going through training, right? Like, you don't want to place somebody in war and they don't understand how to operate their weapon.
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're talking about is like, all right, give me some training on how to equip myself so I know how to use the weapon properly. So when I get into war, I don't have to learn it now. Yeah. You know, and you're never ready for war when you're being shot at or going through the circumstances, your buddies hit, you're being tortured, whatever it is that you're going through. You cannot you don't know what that is until you're actually going through it. You can practice firing the gun and doing your tactics and strategies there, but you need to do that before you get there. And so I think that's what you're talking about is preparation. I know it's a crazy analogy, but It's war. It's
Yeah,
war
no,
out
it's
there.
real. It's
You
real.
getting woken up 7 times in the middle of the night. Boot camp will help you for that. They'll come in and bang the thing, but how do you prepare for not being that tired, and still serving and not getting mad at your spouse and showing complete love? Like it's difficult.
And I know you mentioned order when you were sharing about being a parent, and I think that's one of the first things that come up on that path is like God would like for parents to be in order and in process, meaning, maturing, developing a strong relationship with Him while you're single, connecting with an individual who also has their own individual strong relationship, becoming one in marriage, and then deciding to have children together, versus out of order and there's a lot of ways things can happen out of order. It can just be, you can be in a committed relationship and it can just be a unplanned, pregnancy. There's one night stand situations. There's a lot of different things that happen where the order is completely backwards. And I think that in itself creates a lot of challenges when things are done out of order. Because I know you were talking about like training and getting prepared. I think a lot of, and I can speak from being a child of a parent, where the situation was out of order. If you're like, I realized a lot of the challenges that come with some parenting situations is that people haven't uprooted selfishness. And I think like if that doesn't get dealt with or addressed, or you're not even aware that we have a selfish nature that we have to deal with, like that can show up big time in those spaces for parenting. Like you said, like, why do I got to be up all night? Why do I have to sacrifice? I still want to be in the club. Like whatever it is, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I still want to be doing me. Like I still have a life to live. And I think there's a like a mental space and a maturity space where like understanding that bringing a child into this world comes with choosing to sacrifice and being in a place where you can sacrifice with a cheerful heart, versus being reluctant or feeling like this child has taken away your life. Because ultimately the child feels that too. Like they can feel like a burden or feel like, the love is, does that make sense?
That's powerful because, like you said, I would say the majority of people out there are not going through God's original designs process. And the byproduct of that as a child is neglect, lack, don't feel completely loved. And so what do you say to that child? What do you say to that child so that way they can know that they're loved and they are chosen and they're here for a purpose?
That's tough because I don't think there's a one size fits all. I can speak from my experience, like in hindsight, I didn't have my biological father in my life. My mom was kind of doing her own thing for a period of time while raising me. And when I look back in hindsight, I just know that God had me. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, it's like He always had me. And He always knew that it was going to eventually come to this point where I was going to choose Him, and like the Bible talks about, being chosen, being marked by God. Like God has a special place in His heart for widows, orphans, the fatherless. So like when I learned those things, I look back at my life and realize like, wow, like God really was being a father to me, even though I didn't know it. Like he had me covered. He had grace on my life to keep me from destroying myself. Like Like I had friends who were doing the same things I was doing and got way worse consequences. And majority of them actually have fathers in the home, which was interesting. And I can't 1,000% prove that had a part to play in it, but I believe in my heart, because I didn't have a father in the home, I didn't have any male role models that were willing to step up and kind of take responsibility for helping to raise me. Like, God said, all right, like, I'm gonna cover you. And, took me to the point where, I was able to give my life to him, and he kind of walked me through the process of reparenting me and all that. But I think I would say, if you're in a situation like that, to be encouraged and to know that God's got you. Like, he's real, and he does have a plan and a purpose for your life, even though it may not look like it, it may not feel like it. You may be in a very difficult season. God is still God, and he's still doing what he's doing,
Yeah. It's because a lot of us as adults are still operating as children because we've been hurt, right? And we want to be seen, and we want to feel worthy, and so we're out doing things to prove that we are worthy in the world, right? And maybe we're out running around flashing the money, and that's what gives us value, and or it's the fact that the opposite sex is choosing me, and so I'm sleeping with multiple people, and so I think those are byproducts of not knowing who you really are.
Yeah.
Right. And that's maybe not necessarily your parents' fault. Maybe they didn't create an environment for you to know who you are. But at some point, as an adult, you have to become an adult. I guess you don't have to, it's choice. But when you become an adult, these things start coming off. And I think that's kind of the work that you're talking about with the preparation of like, okay, all right, God, I'm giving my life to you. Show me the areas of my life that aren't of you, and you can strip those things of me, or the identity that isn't of you, or the lies that I've picked up along the way. And I did that for a long time, and it wasn't until God spoke to me and said I needed to release my earthly father, because from being in my life, right? He had no choice. My dad died before I was born, and I always grew up thinking, if my dad was in my life, I would be so much further. I would know this, I would do that, or whatever. I'd be more of a man. And God spoke to me. The first time I ever had an encounter with God was addressing that moment. And he says, am I not your father? Am I not someone you can call on? Have I not been protecting you this entire time? And so what I say to those people who have gone through a rough, maybe childhood, and their parents weren't in their life, let's let them go and put God in that space, because God will never leave you nor forsake you. He has plans to prosper you, not to harm you. And I think it's a trap that we put people in the place where God should be, specifically our parents, because they're the ones who raised us, right? They're supposed to be the ones who love us the most, and then they damage us. And it's a disaster. And we're out here running around the world as adults, but really just broken children. But you can find healing and identity, purpose, vision with God leading you, not people. And so I just offer that to whoever has gone through some traumatic events, maybe don't have their parents in their lives, and they know they're not operating in what God's called them to, but they're hurt inside.
Yeah.
You can take that to God. Please take that to God, because he will take care of that.
That's good. Another thing that I realized is as a parent, you have this amazing opportunity to either repeat the cycles that you experienced in your family or break them. And God has been showing me, like, that his heart and his desire is for me to enter marriage and fatherhood with those cycles already broken.
Yeah.
But you know, the beautiful thing about God is he loves us so much that he gives us a choice. We can choose to go into marriage, go into parenthood with those cycles unaddressed, but we have to understand that they're just going to be magnified and they're going to be amplified because now you're doing life with people. You know, when you're single, when you're by yourself, you can have issues and nobody necessarily know about them. But once you join your life with somebody, you can't hide. You know, there's nowhere to really hide. So God has just been showing me, like, why not deal with the trauma, the generational cycles, the things that damaged you as a child now, before having to put a wife into that situation where she's having to deal with it, a child where they're having to deal with it. You know, I don't want my future children to have to fight the same battles and same demons that I had to fight, you know, as a child and even as an adult. You know, I want to, you know, through the power of the Lord, like, I want to break that stuff off of my life. And I have been, you know, by the grace of God. But I think that's a powerful, I think, realization that every parent, I think, should, like, realize that, man, like, I have the opportunity to do things differently. All right. If y'all are enjoying this episode so far, you want to make sure that you tune in for part 2.
Welcome to the family. Yeah. I had to let my old people